Good afternoon. It's really great to be here giving this presentation. We were here actually in May presenting to Metals Investor Forum. We were a private company then. We went public last July as promised, and we've been trading on the CSE and now the OTCQX for American investors. So we're out there. We actually 2 weeks ago announced a bought deal for $5 million, upsized it to 6.4 at 60 cents, and hopefully we'll close that next week. So we're in a great market to be in. Uranium is, I think, is where we all want to go. Cautionary statement. This is also posted on our website, and you can read that in detail there. So what are we doing? Nuclear fuels, uranium resources in America. We're going to talk primarily about one project we have, which is the KC project in Wyoming. It's quite unique in terms of the scale, in terms of the jurisdiction locally at the local level, but also the state. And we'll also talk a little bit about Encore's relationship with this project in specific. It was vended into the company by Encore, and they have a back-in right that I'll talk a bit more about, but they have a right to take a 51% interest once we have reached a goal of resourcing 15 million pounds of uranium on the project, and then carrying our 49% to make us a producer as well, which is very, very unique in our business to have a pathway to production as an exploration co. So we're in the right place again. This is a uranium bull market, and it's not going to be a flash in the pan. It's multi-year, multi-decade, and we're going to be around for a long time and developing projects and doing things in this space. So the company has just under 48 million shares outstanding at this time, but a little over 11 more will be coming in association with this private placement we're closing. And at that point, we will have some warrants, just under 6 million warrants at 80 cents for a 3-year term. Key shareholders of the company: Encore has a 19.9% interest, which is a result of the projects vended into the company, and as well the board and management of about 10% of the stock too. A lot of our shareholders are actually very significant funds that are heavily involved and have a depth of understanding of the uranium market as a whole and its potential going forward. So very lucky to have an excellent board of directors. Bill Sheriff, who's actually going to talk to you a little bit about Encore Energy in a bit, is a co-founder and also chairman of this company. Great track record of development and also delivering returns to shareholders in the last uranium cycle. He was on board as a director of Blue Rock Resources, a company I ran back in the 2000s, and we were actually the only new conventional uranium producer in Colorado, Utah, which I think speaks a lot to our determination as a team and our ability to get things done. Dave Miller worked as CEO of Strathmore in the last go-around, but also has a deep history of working with Areva, now Orano, the French state uranium exploration and development company. Larry Lahousen's made some great discoveries in conventional uranium down in the Lisbon Valley in Utah. Eugene Spearing, crack ISR, roll front geologist. These guys have all come out to site as well. They're not just board of directors guys that, you send them something, they sign it and send it back and ask, what they've got for options. They're in the field, they're looking at what we're doing, and they're talking with us and optimizing the programs and stuff. Mark Travis, project manager down in Wyoming, is doing a great job at pulling together a team and keeping the drill running there in November and December. We actually drilled up to Christmas, and so it's been great. We'll talk a little bit about the results there a bit too. Where are our assets? Our key assets are in Wyoming. We've got KC, which is our core asset and focus. We've got historical resource at Bobcat, and as well at Boot Heel. Those are 2 additional down the road kind of projects. Moonshine is an ISR project in northwest Arizona, and we see that as well as having the potential to be a company maker in the ISR world. Up in Labrador, we've got a uranium rare earth element project. It's sort of doesn't really fit the story, but there's things in progress to value those for the company, as it were, those assets. Coming in a little bit closer on Casey here, we're looking at the Powder River Basin in gray in Wyoming. You can see the red stars. Those are existing production facilities. They were all pretty much on standby. I think other than Irrigary was doing a little bit, the Southern Star and the Willow Creek complex there, doing a little bit of production. But fundamentally, everybody is now in the process of bringing those plants back online with $106 a pound uranium last week. It's become a very exciting area, and people are pushing and shoving to get things going again. The green stars as well, you can see those are projects that are in development. Two of them of note, I guess, would be Dewey Burdock on the South Dakota border, and then Gas Hills, which is to the southwest of us. And those are Encore assets that kind of relate in the large to what we're doing. Bobcat and Boot Hill, you can see down to the south in the margins of the Shirley Basin, which was actually where they developed the in-situ recovery process. That was where they had the first well fields, and they did that. I'll talk just a bit about how that works. So really, all you're doing with in-situ recovery is pumping groundwater out of a contaminated aquifer. You add oxygen, maybe some bicarbonate soda to it. You pump it back down. That liberates the uranium from where it's encrusted on sand grains, mobilizes it, and then you pump it back up above ground, run it through a resin bed, which takes the uranium out, add more oxygen oxygen and bicarbonate, pump it back down. And between 4 and 6 times generally in most deposits, you get the uranium out of it. And then at that point, you just pump clean water through to remediate the aquifer and make sure it's balanced and in the condition it was when you started. The resins in the resin bed extraction, very simple process, gets up to about 5% uranium. And at that point, the resins are stripped using a weak acid. The acid solution, which is highly enriched in uranium, then the pH changes again. Uranium drops out, you dry it, you put it in a barrel, and you ship it off-site. There's no crazy metallurgy or anything like that. It's a very easy and focused process. You look at a project, and you see a well field. You'll see little well heads with pumps on the top of them. You look at the production facility itself, it's a pole barn. They're not really that big, filled with tanks, and then a drying machine at the far end, and a loading dock for drums. So relatively low capital intensity, and also low impact, no tailings, no pits, no underground mine. So your permitting process is very different. Permitting for ISR is unique in that the two key areas for ISR development are Wyoming and also Texas. And both of those jurisdictions are what we call an agreement state. So the federal regulations around the mining or the production process devolve to the state level. Wyoming, you can see they've developed a number of assets that are production that's been built. They understand the process, and it's about a 2 to 3 year permitting timeline. So as Greg was suggesting earlier, it's a whole lot faster than a conventional mine. That's kind of key. The other aspect of it is the communities in the Powder River Basin are also very comfortable with uranium production in their areas and supportive of it. They want their kids to have jobs and stay in town as opposed to going off to Denver or Seattle or LA or whatever. So community support, fast permitting process, legitimate but fast permitting process, and a lower cap because you're not building huge ball mills and things like that. So it's a great way to do production and very cost effective. There have been over 250 million pounds produced in the Powder River Basin since the 1950s. A lot of it has been produced by these projects with the red stars. Each of those red stars represents about 10 million pounds minimum to be viable for a production facility. So you can see there's a long track record in this basin of the viability of ISR as well. So, looking a little closer to Casey, it's a big project. For comparison, we've got the footprint of a number of the producing assets to the east of us, Irrigary, Christensen Ranch, Nichols Ranch, as well as North Butte. Those are all sort of 10 million pound production assets. We could fit an awful number of those within the 33 miles of trend that we have. The black lines that you can see are actually mapped roll fronts, and the roll fronts are basically the reduction and oxidation boundary within a sedimentary body. And that's where the uranium concentrates, and we get an economic amount of uranium, and that's what we put the well fields on top of. Yeah, so this is with 110 miles of mapped roll fronts, we have an awful lot of targets. How are they mapped? There was actually a lot of work done there in the 70s and 80s by a subsidiary of Detroit Edison Electric, who held the majority of this area themselves, and they were looking to build their own source of uranium for their own reactors, their nuclear reactor power stations. So it was pretty quiet. It wasn't like a commercial company banging the drum. No one really knew a whole lot what was going on there. A couple of years ago, Encore Energy found the records of the drilling, 3,800, or actually it was 3,700 drill holes. We've added 100 since then that we found. But basically they gave the footprint and told us where to go with our drilling. It's kind of our Rosetta Stone in a way. And that gives us such a leg up, especially on a project at this scale, where we want to go next and how we're going to get there as fast as we possibly can. The red spots that you can see are historic resource areas. The largest of that was 500,000 pounds historic at a grade of about 0.138. That's about twice the grade of the production facilities to the east of us in the center of the basin. They're running 0.07, 0.08. So grade, whatever you're mining or whatever you're producing is always king. So it's great to have numbers like this. Our overall grade on the project is about 0.1, still a little bit higher, but I think we can actually expand on saddle, which is where we've been working, and move that forward. One of the other unique things in the Powder River Basin is it's all private surface rights. So that means we've got to go out and we've got to spend some time working with ranchers to get access agreements on the land. But once we've done that, we can drill pretty much wherever we want. We have to pay disturbance fees and remediation and do all those kinds of things, but it gives us a freedom and ability to drill a whole bunch of holes. If you're on BLM ground in the US or National Forest Service, you do your 7 holes in a year, you've used your 5 acres of disturbance up, and now you can go home while you wait for that to be remediated, and maybe next year you'll get another 7 or 8 drill holes. Not a great way to run a business. We've got 6 square miles of ground permitted for drilling. We've got surface access agreements for that ground, and we have 200 drill holes within it permitted. This year we will probably at least double the numbers we should be able to do 400 drill holes there at least. So we'll be pushing really hard to expand on what we already know is there in the red, but also to step out and build new resources beyond that in new areas. And we had pretty good luck on doing that, actually. We've had some really great results. I think we've issued news releases on 61 drill holes at this point. And we've got one of the key things that they value the economics of roll front type deposits or ISR production is looking at the grade thickness. And you get a cutoff of 0.3 is the grade times the thickness of the interval. You can see we've got grade thicknesses like 1.2, things like that are very significantly over what the threshold is. So really great grades. We've seen 3 different formations outcropping in our basin, whereas most of the other exploration companies in the center of the basin are only working with 1. So we've got more targets than everybody else. The project is, I think, just an exceptional opportunity. So actually I will talk about one other thing. So the other thing about this project, let's talk a little bit about Encore's back-end right. So I've got to get out there, I've got to drill as hard and as fast as I can and find 15 million pounds of uranium resources. At that point, Mr. Sheriff over here has a decision to make about how much he likes that project, but he'll have the opportunity to back into a 51% interest on that project by carrying our 49% to production, but also giving us 2.5 times our funds back, our exploration dollars back. which gives us a very unique roadmap to be a producer without having to build a technical team to build out production. And as well, because we will have cash in the bank, we will have the ability to continue to be relevant in the exploration space, building resources elsewhere while we wait for production to happen without diluting the shareholders. Because there's nothing anybody hates worse as a shareholder in a public company that's starting to go down the production track, and it's like, oh, we're going to be producing 2 years, but we're diluting you 15% this year so that we can go drill some holes someplace else. Doesn't fly very well. So yeah, so that's very unique that we can avoid that trap and keep investors interesting and keep the company moving forward while we wait for that. Moving past Casey, one of our other key projects is Moonshine down in northwest Arizona. Also an ISR target. You can see the red area focus. That's where we have historical resources there, about 3.6 million pounds, grading 1.86. That's pretty high grade for ISR. So that's pretty excellent starting spot. We know we have documentation on the red outlines and the red stippled areas, but we don't have drill holes for that, but we know where to drill in those areas to add pounds. And we see the potential for this to be a 10 million pound plus project, and that's sort of our critical point for looking at it as being a production story and going into production. So it's in a good spot. So again, where are we? We're focused in the United States. We're building uranium resources and hopefully production for a domestic uranium industry for consumption by the states. Casey is our core asset. We'll be working very hard there this summer, drilling as fast as we can, building as many pounds as we can. And that whole process is pretty much validated by what we did in November and December drilling, and we'll be moving forward with that. Again, Encore's back in right sort of gives us a critical path to be a producer without the pain and problems that usually accompany that for an exploration co. We've got the right people running the team. We've got the right people on the ground, and we're in the right space again, bull market for uranium, the right place, the right time, and the right project. So I hope you'll follow us. We should have our financing, I think, closing this week coming, and we'll be hopefully getting more news out to you on a number of things this winter. So pretty exciting times. Thank you for your attention, and thanks again, Greg, for having me today.